Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time, we're really diving deep into online learning communities. We're going to explore, how to build genuine connections online. And I have to say, we're both, you know, pretty experienced in this area. It's not just a casual interest for us.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how much the world of education has changed, even just in the last few years. Online learning is, well, it's not just a trend anymore. It's a core part of how we learn and grow. And I've been really lucky to be involved in designing these online learning communities, and I think there is so much potential there.
Yeah, for sure. I was looking at Coursera's research, and it's clear that online learning is just exploding in popularity. It's global now.
Yeah.
You can learn from world-class experts no matter where you are. And I think that's a big draw for people, right? No more relocating for school, no more horrible commutes. It just fits how we live now.
It really does reflect a bigger change we're seeing, don't you think? It's like how remote work has changed how we think about offices. Online learning is doing the same thing to classrooms. And this isn't just because of the pandemic. The Art of Remote Connection Masterclass really dives into this. We're living in a world that's all about digital connection now. So learning how to actually build relationships online is, well, it's really important.
I totally agree. And the benefits, they go way beyond just convenience, right? I mean, we're talking about making education accessible to so many more people. It's something that Coursera mentioned. A lot of the research papers I've read on online education bring this up. It opens doors for people who maybe couldn't have gone to a traditional school.
Right. It's not just opening the doors, it's like tailoring the whole learning journey to you, to your needs. The flexibility is amazing. You can set your own pace. You can fit learning into your life around your busy schedule. That's something that traditional schools, well, they often struggle with that. And then there's the cost. Lower tuition, no commuting costs. It makes education so much more attainable.
And then there's the diversity, right? HBS Online, the Teach.io blog, they all talk about this. How enriching it is to learn with people from all over the world, from all different backgrounds. That's one of the best things about not having those geographical barriers. You're exposed to all sorts of perspectives you'd never get in a normal classroom.
It's like the opposite of an echo chamber, right? You're constantly being challenged to think about things in new ways, to really understand different perspectives. That kind of cross-cultural exchange, it's invaluable, not just for learning the content, but for developing empathy, global awareness, all of that.
And speaking of expanding your horizons, the Teach.io blog also talks about the networking opportunities. You can connect with experts in your field, collaborate on projects, build those relationships that can really shape your career. And you can do all of this without even leaving your house.
It's a total game changer, especially for those in fields that are, well, changing so quickly. The ability to connect with professionals all over the world, share knowledge, stay ahead of the curve, it's incredibly valuable. And it makes mentoring and guidance, it makes those things much more accessible. You're not limited to whoever happens to live near you anymore.
But let's be honest here. It's not always easy, right?
Yeah.
One of the big challenges that a lot of the research talks about is isolation. It's easy to feel disconnected online, especially if the community isn't designed to avoid that. One of the most, well, I don't know, one of the most powerful examples I read was in an Edutopia article. A physics teacher tried to move his class online, right? He had this amazing connected classroom in person, but online it just didn't work. Students felt lost, they weren't motivated, and in the end he had to cancel the course.
That example really emphasizes something really important. You can't just take what you do in person and put it online. You have to really think about how to create connections. You have to understand how people interact online, and then build a space where people feel like they belong. The article, Building Effective Learning Communities Online, really goes deep into this. It's all about going beyond just presenting content and finding ways to get people actively involved.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we fight that feeling of isolation and build those genuine connections? That's what we'll dig into next.
Hmm.
All right, so we've talked about how important it is to be intentional, right? You can't just expect people to connect online without putting in some effort. So let's get down to brass tacks. What are some actual things that, facilitators, teachers, anyone running an online community can do to help people connect and avoid that sense of isolation?
Well, a lot of the research points to a few key areas. One that comes up all the time in the Art of Remote Connection Masterclass, academic journals all over the place, is the idea of collaboration. It's not just about assigning group projects, though. It's more about making collaboration a regular part of the learning experience.
So like giving each other feedback.
Exactly, yeah. And working together on documents, brainstorming on digital whiteboards, that kind of thing. Anything that gets people working together instead of just sitting there listening.
It's about getting everyone involved in a shared goal.
Right, exactly. When you're working together towards something, it's like all the little pieces everyone does fit together to make something bigger.
I see what you mean.
And it taps into how we are as humans, you know? We're social creatures. We're meant to connect with each other. When we feel like we're part of something bigger, we're more motivated, we're more engaged, and we learn better.
That makes sense.
And there are just so many ways to do this online.
Oh, I know. I was reading about this thing called unofficial starts
Hmm.
in the Art of Remote Connection Masterclass. It's such a cool idea. Basically, you open the session a few minutes early and let people chat before things officially start.
It's about using those little bits of time to build connections. Instead of jumping right into content, you can start with an icebreaker, ask a thought-provoking question, or even just share a laugh. It helps create a more relaxed atmosphere.
Oh, and they had this great example in the masterclass, unofficial start art. It's where everyone works together to create something online, like filling in pixels to reveal an image or writing a poem together.
It's fun, and it helps people feel like they've already accomplished something together right from the start.
Yeah, it's so clever.
It also helps with what we call the bystander effect, which can be a problem online. When people see others participating, they're more likely to jump in themselves.
It's amazing how these little things can make such a difference in the overall feeling of the community, right?
Absolutely. And it's not just about making people feel good. It's about creating an environment where people can really learn.
Right, because when people feel connected, they're more likely to ask questions and share their thoughts.
Exactly. And that leads to those really interesting discussions that are so important for learning.
Yeah. And speaking of discussions,
Hmm.
one of the things that HBS Online found in their research was that a strong sense of community actually helps people stick with their courses. People are more likely to finish when they feel connected.
They feel like they're on a journey together, and that shared experience keeps them going.
It's like having a support system
Hmm.
right there online with you. So another important part of building connections is establishing like shared goals and values. The InSync Insights articles, the ones about collaborative learning, they talk a lot about this. The community needs to have a purpose that everyone can believe in.
And that purpose has to resonate with the people in the community. It has to connect to their own lives and their goals and their values. If it does that, their engagement levels skyrocket.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it's not just about the learning material itself, it's about the impact that learning can have on the world.
Right, like making a real difference. And there's that great case study in the Building Virtual Communities of Practice video, the one about the United Way and how they built a community focused on improving kids' lives in Atlanta. They wanted people to not just talk about the problems, but actually come up with solutions together.
That's such a good example, and it shows how online communities can lead to real change in the real world.
I know. And it highlights how important it is to be really clear about what you want to achieve. It's not enough to just gather a bunch of people together online.
You have to give them a direction, a purpose.
And that purpose can really empower people, especially people who might have had negative experiences with traditional education. There's another amazing example in the cross-border webinar about students from all over the world who worked together to design these serious games. They weren't just for fun. They were about solving real-world problems.
Yeah, like how to stay safe at work during a pandemic.
Exactly. And that's a perfect illustration of how online learning can break down the walls between the classroom and the real world. These students weren't just learning about stuff. They were actually using what they learned to create something tangible and make a difference.
It's almost like a global think tank, but online. And it ties back to what we were saying about professional networking, right? Imagine being a student with that kind of project on your resume. It's gold.
Totally. So we're seeing that online learning communities can be so much more than just places to get information. They can launch careers, spark social change, and connect people in really meaningful ways. But, we can't pretend that everything is perfect. Building and maintaining these communities, it takes effort, and you have to be aware of the challenges that are unique to the online world.
Absolutely.
We can't assume that people are just automatically going to be engaged online. The Building an Online Learner Community in the Virtual Classroom article talks about this, how it's actually really easy for people to get distracted or just tune out online.
Yeah, and it's a real challenge to figure out how to keep people interested in participating.
So how do we crack the code of engagement? How do we get people involved and learning and connecting online? Any ideas?
Well, there are a lot of factors to consider. There's no single solution. But if we look at the research, we can find some key principles and practices that can help. One of the most important, and maybe the most overlooked, is intentional communication.
Okay, what exactly does that mean? What does intentional communication actually look like in an online learning environment? I'm curious to hear what you think about this.
Well, I think it starts with understanding that online communication is just different from talking to someone face to face. You
Hmm.
don't have those little nonverbal cues, the shared energy you get in a room. So you have to be more careful about how you share information, how you lead discussions, and how you build relationships.
Sounds like a point.
There are some really good techniques for this in the Art of Remote Connection masterclass, like sentence completion exercises. You give people the beginning of a sentence and ask them to finish it.
That's interesting. So they don't have to start from scratch, which can be intimidating.
Exactly. And you often get more thoughtful answers than you would with a simple yes or no question. It's a good way to get people thinking and sharing their ideas.
I like that.
And it's not just about what you say, it's also about the tone you set, creating a welcoming and open atmosphere.
That reminds me of that example from the masterclass, the one where the facilitator of an executive training program called himself a painkiller for their meetings. Such a funny way to describe his role.
I know, right? But it immediately gets people's attention. They're suddenly curious and want to know more.
And it subtly communicates that he understands their pain points and he's there to help.
Exactly. That's a great example of how using clear and engaging language can boost engagement and get everyone on the same page. When you directly address people's needs and motivations, even in a lighthearted way, you create a connection that goes beyond just the material you're teaching.
It's like you're creating this sense of, like, we're all in this together, even though everyone's physically separated.
Exactly. And that feeling of shared experience is crucial for building a sense of community. And that brings us to another really important element: setting clear expectations and routines. The Fostering a Strong Community in a Virtual K-12 Classroom article really emphasizes this, especially for people who are new to learning online. In a traditional classroom, the structure is already there.
You know when to show up, where to sit, what's expected of you.
Right. But online, you have to create that structure intentionally.
So it's about providing a framework that helps people navigate the online space, manage their time, and feel like they're part of something.
Exactly. And the Building an Online Learner Community in the Virtual Classroom article goes a step further and suggests giving people specific tools for managing their time and staying organized online. Things like digital planners, time blocking techniques, even encouraging regular breaks, that kind of thing.
It's like you're setting them up for success from the start, not just throwing them in and hoping for the best.
Exactly. And that proactive approach can really help create a sense of psychological safety within the community. People are more likely to participate and share their ideas when they feel supported and confident that they have the resources they need to succeed. Speaking of challenges, one that often comes up in online learning communities is uneven participation. Some people dominate the conversation while others stay silent. So how do we make sure everyone has a chance to contribute and benefit from the group?
So we've covered a lot, haven't we? We've looked at what makes online learning communities work, the good and the bad, and how to turn a group of people online into a real learning powerhouse. But I bet some of you are thinking, okay, this is great, but where do I even begin?
That's a great question. And I think the first thing is to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What do you want to get out of joining an online learning community? Are you trying to connect with people in your field, dive into a hobby, or maybe just meet new people and have interesting conversations?
Right. It's about knowing what you want and then finding a community that fits. And there are so many different kinds of online learning communities out there. There are those huge online courses, the MOOCs, that give you a taste of all sorts of subjects. Then there are smaller groups that focus on really specific things. It's like a buffet of learning.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to try different ones out, See what works for you. Remember that physics teacher we talked about? Sometimes what seems like it'll work well online just doesn't. So experiment. Find the spaces where you feel comfortable and excited to learn.
It's like finding the right fit, kind of like online dating, but for learning.
That's a good analogy. You got to try out a few first dates and see where the sparks fly. And you never know, the most surprising connections can be the best ones.
I like that. Okay, so you found a community that seems interesting. What's next?
Well, then it's time to jump in. Don't just sit back and watch. Remember those little things we talked about from the Art of Remote Connection masterclass?
Hmm.
Like participating in the collaborative calculator or sharing a story during the unofficial start? Those small things add up.
Right. It's about being an active part of the community.
Exactly. Go from being someone who just absorbs information to someone who helps create it. And it's not just about sharing what you know, it's also about learning from other people, especially those who see things differently than you. That's how we grow and learn new things.
It's like that saying, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled.
Yes, exactly. And online learning communities, they can be the spark that ignites that fire. They can connect us with other people who are just as curious and passionate about learning as we are.
I love that. But it's also important to remember that these online communities, they're a great way to add to our real-world connections, not replace them.
Totally. We need both, you know? We need those face-to-face interactions that give us energy, and we need those online spaces that expand our world and connect us with people from all over.
It's like finding the right balance.
Yeah, exactly. It's about creating a blend of learning experiences that makes our lives richer and helps us make a difference.
Okay, so we're wrapping up our deep dive now.
Mm.
And I want to challenge you all to take what you've learned and actually use it. Go out there, explore different communities, find the ones that click for you, get involved, be yourself, and add to the energy that makes these spaces so amazing.
Who knows, maybe we'll discover that the future of learning isn't just online, it's about community. It's about learning and growing together.
That's a great thought.
Yeah.
Until next time, everyone, keep diving deep.